So come on up here, Marta.
Hello, everybody. On behalf of my sister Donna, my niece Trasia, family members that are present here today, those that were unable to come, as well as those whose shoulders we stand on, it gives me a great deal of pleasure and pride to stand before you in this historic building and make remarks at the occasion of the naming of the Donn F. Bailey Legacy Hall. I am really overwhelmed by the love and the power in this room. We are grateful, yet humbled by the university's decision to honor my father in this way. Thank you to the Board of Trustees and staff at Northeastern who worked to make this possible. I'd like to personally acknowledge and thank Dr. Grace Dawson for her leadership on the Board of Trustees in making this a reality. I'd also like to recognize the superb staff of the Office of Institutional Advancement under the leadership of Dr. Carla Naraki, with special thanks to Kathy Pace. My father loved the Center for Inner City Studies. This was his life's work and passion outside of his family. Our family actually grew up here in many, many ways. Allow me just for a couple of minutes to give you a little background on my father so that you will learn a few personal facts about him that helped to shape his life and who he was and who he became and hopefully how he will be remembered. Daddy was born on February 26, 1932 in Newcastle, Indiana, a small town on northeast of Indianapolis that had a population of about 16,000, 300 of which were black people. Since the town was really small, the blacks and white children went to school together. However, Newcastle was de facto segregated. Blacks were confined to certain residential areas. They could not go to clothing stores and try on clothes. They were not able to swim in the Bakersfield swimming pool or go to the movie house. They had to sit on the balcony. Newcastle was also very notorious for its acceptance of the KKK philosophy. Dad used to tell us about the Klan marches that would happen around the courthouse square at the 4th of July celebrations. And after the parade, they would circle around the courthouse for hours. And I actually remember witnessing one of those myself in the 1980s after a Memorial Day parade. And they're still there. His parents told him to behave and yet be proud of the Bailey name. His father told him and his brother not to take crap from anyone and to protect their sister. He worked, my grandfather worked for the 39 years in the local Chrysler plant and had his run-ins with white folks. During this time, he and his siblings were encouraged to compete aggressively in school and truly believed that they were as good as anyone and in some cases better. However, they were cautioned that they had to prove it in the classroom and in all of their school activities. My father felt real pride in putting a lie to one of his teacher's assessments in 1947. She told him that going to college was not realistic and that he should prepare himself to work in the Chrysler factory. His parents said, "Forget her, you're going to IU and you better graduate." My father graduated with honors from Newcastle High School in 1949 and went on to Indiana University and received both his BS and MA degrees from Indiana University. In fact, he was the first African American in Henry County to graduate from college. Later in the 70s, we moved to Pennsylvania where Dad received his doctorate from Penn State University. So much for effective high school counseling in the 40s. My father's training as a speech language therapists at IU included several academic assumptions of the 50s and 60s. The field of speech pathology recognized Standard American English as the premier language goal for everyone, and that social and regional dialects were regarded as low prestige, social, cultural elements in American English that had to be replaced. A pivotal point in his career occurred in 1960 when his supervisor paid him a visit at the Willard Elementary School to observe his teaching performance. She asked to see his wait list of children who had been assessed as having speech disorders. After reviewing it, she wondered why he only had 40 names on the list, and most of the other speech therapists had over 100 names on that list. My father told her that he recorded only those children who had speech disorders. He further informed her that black children may have Southern dialects or ethnic speech differences, but they were not children with defects. They are speech differences which could be addressed by speech teachers in later grades if those differences persisted or became problematic in reading proficiency. When or if a speech specialist formally addressed those differences, they would be approached with a methodology that encouraged children to work towards enhancing their dialect range. He told his supervisor that black children's first learned dialect must not be attacked by teachers as bad or inferior because they learned their speech habits from their parents, relatives, and friends, and as such, it would be a grave mistake to condemn their speech. When a child's speech is attacked as inadequate, the teacher is essentially attacking the child's home and friends and family. Hereafter, she viewed my father as an arrogant Negro and opposed her way of thinking. These experiences and others formed the basis for his interest in and extended research on the theory, structure, and function of Black English, or Ebonics, and how it relates to the learning styles of Black children. In 1965, my father resigned from the Chicago Public Schools and joined Dr. Donald Smith and Dr. Nancy Arnaz in the founding of the Center for Inner City Studies. In 1967, my father joined with other speech-language pathologists who were members of the Black Caucus of ASHA to challenge their restrictive policies of speech differences. They fought within the profession to oppose those speech-language pathologists who advocated replacing the dialect with so-called Standard American English. They defended the dialect as an important form of language that was learned in the home and community, and thus should be accepted and built upon as a foundation. They felt that Black children would be less likely to oppose language change if they truly believed that their first learned language was all right. Their fight continued through the 70s. As a result, the National Black Association for Speech, Language, and Hearing was co-founded by my father, Eugene Wiggins, and Njeri Nuru in 1977. After my father received his doctorate in 1974, he was appointed director and professor at CICS. He retired in 1996 and continued to teach speech communication courses as a visiting lecturer until the fall of 2004, when my mother died unexpectedly. Growing up, I remember a countless number of events here at the center and in this very auditorium. My mother was always intricately involved in the receptions or celebrations that were held here at the center. She loved to cook and entertain. I remember fondly many faculty and staff members that were a part of the center and Northeastern at one time, and some even still now. Sonia Stone, Jacob Carruthers, Elkin Satoli, Ronald Williams, Ayana Karanja, Gloria Lattimore Peace, Fern Jordan, Gloria Washington, Bob Starks, Anderson Thompson, Carol Adams, Ann Smith, Ida Carruthers, Sherman Beverly, Eldridge Scales, Elise Clairbout, and Conrad Worrell. My father had enormous respect and love for these intellectual giants. I could go on and on about my father, but time will not permit. Each of you here today, I'm sure, has a Donn F. Bailey story, some funny and perhaps some not so funny. But thanks for keeping him alive in your hearts and minds. His spirit and that of his beloved wife, June, will indeed live on in these walls and in our hearts. Thanks again, and may God bless you enormously.